The Upton Ridge community looked picture-perfect manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, kids riding scooters in spotless driveways. It was the kind of neighborhood that sold itself in seconds, and Ethan Langford was ready to settle in. After years of renting cramped apartments across 3 states, this place promised peace, safety, and finally, permanence for his wife, Mia, and their 2 children. The family arrived on a cloudy Friday morning in June. The moving truck had barely backed into the driveway when a tall woman in a burgundy pantsuit appeared on the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, smile too wide, eyes too sharp. "Welcome to Upton Ridge," she said cheerily, waving. "I'm Cynthia Langford, HOA president and proud to serve our lovely little community." Mia smiled politely. Ethan extended a hand. Cynthia didn't take it. "I just wanted to drop off our community guidelines," she continued, holding up a thick stapled packet. "I also noticed your children brought chalk. Please be aware, sidewalk art is prohibited. It stains the concrete." Ethan blinked. The kids hadn't even unpacked their toys. "No worries," he said calmly. "We'll go through the rules." Cynthia's smile didn't shift. "Wonderful. We like to keep things orderly here." That evening, Mia found a second envelope taped to their door, this one handwritten. "Just a heads up, we expect lawn trimming within 48 hours of move-in. And don't forget, window blinds must be white or light beige. Enjoy your stay." Ethan frowned at the note. Mia laughed nervously. She must just be thorough. But Ethan didn't laugh. Something about Cynthia's presence lingered, not friendly, not warm, just watchful. By Sunday morning, the family had already received their first courtesy notice via email, a warning that their trash bins had been left visible for more than 20 minutes. Ethan checked the timestamp. He'd rolled the bins back 5 minutes after pickup. Someone was watching closely. Too closely. That night, while Mia tucked in the kids, Ethan walked the perimeter of the house. He spotted 2 small dome cameras tucked under a street lamp near their property. They weren't the standard community cams, these were newer, sleeker, and pointed directly at their home. He said nothing to Mia. She was finally happy. He wouldn't ruin it with his growing suspicion, but that night, he set up his own system. 3 micro cameras. 1 in the porch light. 1 above the garage. 1 in the backyard birdhouse. All synced to a private server in his home office. Ethan had once worked in cybersecurity for a private defense contractor. He'd walked away to live a quieter life. But old habits didn't die easy. If Cynthia wanted to watch, he'd watch back. On Monday, the HOA issued another notice. Unauthorized. Object in front yard. Tricycle. The trike had been there for 7 minutes. Ethan didn't argue. He uploaded the clip to a private folder, labeled it, dated it, stored the first piece of evidence. Mia was still convinced Cynthia was just being thorough, but Ethan knew better. She wasn't inspecting the neighborhood, she was targeting them, and he was going to find out. Why? Call to action smoothly embedded. If you've ever felt like someone in charge was watching too closely, keep watching. This story's just getting started, and trust me, you won't believe what Ethan's cameras are about to capture. The week dragged on with a strange tension. Ethan had lived in big cities, dense suburbs, even backwoods towns, but nothing compared to the quiet pressure of Upton Ridge. The streets were spotless, the air too still, and the eyes always there, even when no one was around. The tricycle violation had been just the beginning. On Wednesday, Mia received a violation notice for having unsanctioned window coverings. She had hung up sheer floral curtains in the kids' bedrooms. Apparently, only solid white or beige was allowed. Mia rolled her eyes and pulled them down that night, replacing them with plain blinds. Ethan didn't say much, but the next morning, he checked his server and rewound the security footage. At 6:14 a.m., a silver Lexus slowed in front of their home. A woman in sunglasses leaned out with a tablet in hand. She aimed it at the upstairs windows, tapped the screen a few times, and drove off without stopping. Ethan paused the video, zoomed in. Cynthia. Made for early morning drive-bys in 5 days. Each one slower, closer, more deliberate. Mia tried to brush it off, telling him, she's just being overzealous. Maybe this is normal for gated communities. But Ethan knew better. The Lexus didn't stop at other houses. The inspection was personal. Then came the noise complaint. That Friday night, their kids played tag in the backyard at sunset. Laughter, running feet, the usual joy of a summer evening. At 8:17 p.m., the doorbell rang. When Ethan answered it, Cynthia stood with crossed arms and a fake smile. "Evening," she said sweetly. "We received a complaint from a neighbor about excessive noise. Would you mind keeping it down? We try to maintain a quiet environment here." Ethan looked past her. The street was empty. All windows dark. "Which neighbor?" he asked. "I can't disclose that," she said. "Confidentiality is key." He didn't argue, just nodded, closed the door, and reviewed the footage. Cynthia had parked down the street, walked up quietly, and stood near their fence for almost 10 minutes watching the kids, recording them on her phone before ringing the doorbell. He saved that clip too. Each file was neatly labeled, curtains_snoop_0612.mov, trike_report_0610.mov, noise_stalking_0615.mov. He was building something, not just a record but a trap. Later that night, Mia's phone lit up with a message from the HOA portal, a gentle reminder about the shape of their hedges. The satellite photo attached was so close, it had to be taken from their lawn. Ethan checked the birdhouse cam again. 2:42 a.m. Someone walked right up to the property line and snapped photos through the hedge. The figure wore dark clothes, but the angle of the birdhouse caught a flash of red from the collar of the jacket. A burgundy hue, just like Cynthia's usual blazer. He leaned back from the screen, breath shallow. This wasn't just about rules. This was surveillance, targeted, creeping, intentional. But she hadn't noticed the real cameras yet, and she certainly didn't know that Ethan's system captured metadata timestamps, GPS drift, audio indexing, everything. She was leaving a trail of digital footprints, and Ethan, he was tracking every step. Sunday morning came like a reset. Pancakes on the griddle, the kids drawing with washable markers at the dining table. Mia was finally starting to feel settled. But Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, laptop open, security feeds rolling like a news studio war room. He didn't sleep much the night before. At 3:08 a.m., the backyard cam had recorded something new: movement. A figure stood still by their fence, just on the outer edge, holding what looked like a phone with a long lens attachment. They didn't cross into the yard. Not quite, but they stood long enough to make Ethan's stomach twist. He zoomed in. Same jacket, burgundy. This wasn't HOA business. It was obsession. Ethan had been patient, gathering clips, organizing evidence, watching the situation spiral while Mia tried to protect their sense of normal. But something about that silent figure in the dark yard tipped the scales. This wasn't just about violations or control. It was about fear, and now Ethan was afraid for his family. He decided it was time for a test. Later that day, he placed a red plastic toy on the front lawn. Deliberate, visible, technically against the HOA's rules. Just enough to catch Cynthia's attention if she was watching. Then he waited. It didn't take long. At 6:32 p.m., a message came through the HOA app. Reminder, toys must be stored out of view. Consider this a formal notice. But here's the problem. The toy had only been outside for 9 minutes. Ethan hadn't even gone back in the house. He'd sat on the porch the entire time. He hadn't seen Cynthia's car. No one walked by. No neighbors were out. And yet somehow Cynthia had seen it, unless she wasn't watching from the street. Unless she had eyes inside. The property line. Mia came out with a coffee and found Ethan staring at the birdhouse again. "What's wrong now?" she asked. He hesitated. "I think someone's recording us. Not just watching filming." She blinked. "You mean Cynthia?" He nodded slowly, and not from the sidewalk anymore. Mia didn't laugh it off this time. Her face tightened. "You think she's tapping our windows?" Ethan didn't answer. He opened a file on his laptop, instead compiling timestamps, camera angles, GPS tags, everything he'd tracked over the last 10 days. Then, finally, he said it out loud. "She's breaking laws, Mia, real ones. Harassment, trespassing, maybe worse." The worst part wasn't just the surveillance. It was the slow poison Cynthia was dripping into the community. One neighbor stopped waving. Another looked away when Mia passed on the sidewalk. There were whispers now. The Langfords were difficult, not cooperative, disrespectful of community culture. Cynthia wasn't just spying. She was isolating them, framing them. That night, Ethan checked every inch of the exterior again. Flashlight in hand. Porch lights off. At the edge of the backyard near the hedges, he found it. A small black object hidden beneath a decorative rock. A motion sensor. Not one of his. He picked it up slowly, Tiny HOA logo sticker on the underside. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. Cynthia had planted hardware on their property, and she didn't know that. Ethan had recorded her doing it. Call to action subtle and suspenseful. Stay tuned. Ethan just crossed the point of no return, and now it's not just about defense. It's about exposing the truth, no matter how deep Cynthia's control goes. What happens next will shock the neighborhood. The motion sensor sat on Ethan's desk like a ticking bomb. He hadn't told Mia where he found it. Not yet. She was already rattled, and the kids had started asking questions. Ethan didn't want them living in fear, not until he understood the full scale of what they were up against. So he did what he used to do best. He went deeper, while the rest of Upton Ridge slept behind identical blinds and perfectly trimmed hedges. Ethan dismantled the device. Small, circuit board, short-range transmitter, powered by a wafer battery. It pinged a signal, likely to a receiver within 500 feet. But the real problem, it had a data logger. Someone wasn't just watching for motion, they were tracking when and how often the family entered specific parts of their own yard. It was more than control. It was surveillance, targeted, coordinated, intentional. The next morning, Ethan faked a run around the block but instead looped back behind the community center where the HOA's administrative shed was located. He knew Cynthia had a key. Probably kept her neighborhood files there, but what interested him wasn't paperwork. It was what was mounted on the rear corner of the structure. A gray receiver box with blinking lights, identical to what he'd seen on the motion sensor's spec sheet. She was pulling in signals from devices, probably planted around multiple homes. Ethan snapped photos from behind a pine bush, then quickly left. Back home, he uploaded everything to a secure server. He didn't know exactly how far Cynthia's net spread, but if she'd planted devices on his property, odds were she'd done it elsewhere too. That's when he got an idea. He reached out anonymously on the neighborhood group app. Has anyone else had unexpected HOA visits or strange violations? Curious if I'm the only one. The thread exploded. A woman named Sandra replied within minutes. I was fined for my garage door color, which hasn't changed in 4 years. Another neighbor chimed in. They said I left a patio light on past curfew. I was out of town that night. Then one more. I think someone's snooping in my yard. My dog's been barking every night at 2 a.m., always facing the same corner. Ethan's pulse quickened. This wasn't an isolated attack. Cynthia had been doing this to others, too, just more quietly. His family had become the loudest target. He decided it was time to escalate. That evening, he attended the HOA's open forum meeting for the first time. Cynthia was there, front and center in her usual pantsuit, running the room like a courtroom judge. She welcomed residents with her sharp smile, eyes scanning like a hawk's. Ethan sat in the back row, recording everything. He raised his hand mid-meeting. Question, he said calmly, are we allowed to install our own security devices on personal property? Cynthia's eyes narrowed. Within reason, she said. As long as they're disclosed. Surveillance devices need approval. Ethan nodded. Interesting. Just wanted clarity. Because I found one. On my property. Not mine, not approved, and definitely not disclosed. Murmurs rippled through the room. Cynthia's smile faltered, but only for a second. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding, she said quickly, perhaps something from a former owner. I checked. It was recently activated, Ethan said, and it wasn't just there. It was transmitting data. That's against state law. Silence now. Ethan didn't push further. Not yet. He wanted her to feel it, the pressure, the squeeze of exposure. She didn't know how much he already had. She didn't know that this meeting was already being streamed live to a private folder labeled. 3 days passed in uneasy quiet, no new notices. No surprise visits. Not even the usual drive-by surveillance. Ethan didn't trust the silence. He kept his cameras rolling. His motion alerts tuned to the finest settings. Cynthia had gone to quiet too fast. Either she was planning something, or watching him unravel. On the third night, it happened, at exactly 3:12 a.m. His backyard camera pinged. He was already awake. Something inside him hadn't let him sleep. He opened the live feed instantly. There was someone in the yard. A shadow moved across the back fence, low and careful, not rushing, familiar with the layout. The person wore dark clothes, a hood, gloves. They crouched by the side gate, pried it open with something thin, and stepped into the yard. Ethan stayed frozen, barely breathing. The figure moved with intent toward the birdhouse. The one that contained a hidden lens. They knew. The person reached up, unscrewed the front panel, took something out, looked it over, then turned and the camera caught the full profile. It was Cynthia, no hood, no disguise. Just arrogance. She didn't expect anyone to be watching this late. She had grown too confident in her control. Ethan hit record. Timestamp, facial match. He switched camera angles to catch her from the side porch light, then again through the upstairs hallway cam. Watching her silhouette move through the yard, like she owned it, she placed something small behind the garden rocks, then left. 7 minutes. Total. By 3:19 a.m., she was gone. Ethan waited 15 minutes before going outside. He didn't want a confrontation. Not yet. Behind the rocks, nestled, carefully, under a layer of mulch, was another device. This one was more sophisticated. A miniature parabolic mic. Directional. Designed to pick up sound through windows. Ethan didn't say a word. He didn't wake Mia. He didn't call the police. Not yet. Instead, he took the device inside and carefully dismantled it, revealing the brand and model number. Expensive. Not store-bought. This was professional-grade surveillance, and Cynthia had planted it like she'd done it before. By morning, Ethan had packaged everything into a neat digital archive: videos, photos, device, scans, timestamps, community member testimonials, even HOA policy violations. He encrypted it, uploaded it to a secure server, and set a failsafe if he didn't manually check in with the server within 48 hours. The entire archive would automatically be sent to the local news outlet and a private investigator friend. From his past life, it wasn't just about documenting anymore, it was about protection. At breakfast, Mia noticed how quiet he was. He told her everything, every recording, every trace, every late-night intrusion. At first, she was in shock. Then she was furious. She came into our yard. She touched our things. She was right under the kid's window. Ethan nodded slowly. I know, but I'm not reacting the way she wants. She's waiting for us to crack. So what do? We let her think we're still clueless, he said, and when the time comes, we bury her with truth. Later that day, Ethan installed a fake dummy camera where the real one had been. Left it visible. He wanted Cynthia to think she'd succeeded. That she'd silenced them. He even put the mulch back exactly how she left it, let her feel in control, because soon, the only thing she'd be controlling was her own downfall. Call to action, cliffhanger style. Everything's in motion now. Cynthia's gone from manipulator to trespasser. But Ethan's not hiding anymore. What happens in the next 24 hours will shatter the entire community. Stay with this story because the real exposure is just about to begin. The next morning felt strangely normal. Birds chirped. Sprinklers ticked on. Neighborhood dogs barked at joggers. On the surface, Upton Ridge looked like a utopia again, but Ethan knew what crawled underneath the surface now: a hive. Carefully built by Cynthia Langford, with cameras for eyes and microphones for stingers. She wasn't just a busybody. She was running a quiet operation, organized, structured, hidden beneath the paper-thin veneer of HOA policy. And she'd gotten sloppy. That afternoon, Ethan took his casual walk through the neighborhood, something he hadn't done since the fines started. But this time, he wasn't looking at lawns. He was scanning corners, roof lines, porch lights. He spotted the first device outside lot 18, just above the floodlight. A small camera embedded in what looked like a motion sensor. Too new. Not HOA-issued, another one blinked behind a wooden fence at lot 22. Pointed suspiciously low at the backyard seating area. Ethan marked each location on his phone's GPS app, overlaying a rough map of Cynthia's surveillance reach. Every home on that list had one thing in common. They'd all complained on the HOA portal in the last year. She was punishing dissenters, not with violations, but with WATCHLISTS. By the time he made it home, he had mapped 11 homes with unauthorized devices. Later that night, he logged into the HOA server using credentials he'd acquired when Cynthia left her tablet on the podium during a meeting 2 weeks prior. She'd logged into the back-end system, and Ethan had memorized the login pattern, a trick he hadn't used since his defense contracting days. The HOA network wasn't professionally secured. It was basic, just enough to seem legitimate. And that's when he found it. A subdirectory named Upton_surveillance_internal. It was encrypted, but not deeply. Inside, he found a list of homeowner profiles with notations. Detailed notes about behavior, noise levels, complaints, even which residents left their blinds open too often. Some entries had time-stamped Images attached stills from hidden cams. But the Langford's file was different, larger, labeled flagged potential liability. Inside were dozens of images, Mia doing yoga in the living room, the kids playing in the backyard, Ethan working in his office. None of these were taken from the street. All from angles that proved illegal access. There were also notes, refuses to comply with aesthetic orders, likely recording, caution advised. Could disrupt order of community. Ethan sat frozen. Cynthia wasn't just documenting them, she had marked them for removal. That night, he sent anonymous screenshots of the folder to 3 HOA board members, then he waited by morning. The group chat for Upton Ridge exploded. One member, Rachel Connor, demanded an emergency session. Another posted a blurry photo of a strange device they found under their porch. Within an hour, 5 families had come forward with their own evidence of being spied on. The hive had been cracked open, but Cynthia didn't respond. She didn't deny. She didn't even post. She vanished. Her house sat quiet, curtains drawn, porch light off. Ethan wasn't celebrating yet, because cornered animals don't stay still forever. And Cynthia. She wasn't just a pest, she was a queen. And queens defend their hive with everything they have. Call to action momentum builder. The community is waking up, but Cynthia is far from finished. What happens next won't just expose the truth, it'll set the whole neighborhood on fire. Stay locked in. The reckoning is just one meeting away. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp. By 6:15, the community hall was already packed. Folding chairs were pulled out from the storage closet. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in months sat shoulder to shoulder. Some carried printed screenshots. Others brought flash drives or just came with crossed arms and stiff backs. But Ethan didn't walk in with accusations. He walked in with evidence. A thumb drive in his pocket. A private streaming server already queued to go live. He had only one goal tonight, to make sure Cynthia couldn't twist the truth into policy again. At 6:58, she entered. Cynthia Langford moved like a politician, dressed in a crisp gray suit, her lips pressed into a calm but deliberate smile. She offered nods to a few board members, ignored the whispers, and stepped up to the podium like she was still in full control. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. She began smoothly. I understand there have been concerns, and I'm here to clarify them. The nerve of her calm, composed, unapologetic, made Ethan's blood simmer. But he stayed quiet. Let her talk. Some of you have mentioned unauthorized devices, she continued. These are likely misidentified components from our approved security upgrades. All equipment was installed to keep Upton Ridge safe. We have procedures. Everything is documented. There's nothing secret about our efforts to maintain peace and order. Someone in the crowd shouted, "You bugged our backyard." Cynthia didn't flinch. That's absurd. These conspiracy theories will only serve to divide us. That was Ethan's cue. He stood up slowly, walked to the front, and without a word, plugged his thumb drive into the media port. The hall's projector clicked on. The screen came to life. A time-stamped video began to play. 3:12 a.m. backyard cam. Cynthia slipping through the Langford side gate. Hands and gloves, removing the birdhouse panel, placing the parabolic mic. Gasps rippled across the room. Cynthia paled, but she held her composure. This is doctored. I'll have our IT team. It's not just one video, Ethan cut in. There are 47 files. Collected over 2 weeks. Devices planted in multiple homes. Files with personal data. Behavioral logs. Photos of children playing in private yards. Conversations recorded through windows. He hit the arrow key. Another slide. A folder titled Upton_surveillance_internal opened. Names, addresses, notes on personal routines. He turned to the crowd. None of this was authorized by the board. None of it was disclosed to residents. It was hidden on a private drive linked only to Cynthia's admin access. People were standing now. One woman shouted, "You spied on my daughter." Another man yelled, "I trusted you." Board member Rachel Connor stood. "We need a vote. Immediately. Effective removal. Emergency Clause 7B. Cynthia's mask cracked then. The corner of her mouth twitched. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Ethan didn't need to press further. He'd already won. The board voted unanimously. Cynthia was stripped of her position. She was told to vacate her home pending a civil investigation. Police were already waiting outside as she was escorted out. She turned once to look at Ethan, not in rage, but in recognition. He had done what no one else dared. He outplayed her. He exposed her, and now, the neighborhood she tried to control was turning against her. One voice. One family at a time. Call to action powerful and emotional. You'd think it ends here, but sometimes exposing the villain just opens the door to a deeper truth. Cynthia was just the surface. The real twist. That's still coming. Stay tuned for the final chapter. You won't believe who was pulling strings behind her back. It should have ended with Cynthia. Her removal felt like victory. The neighborhood applauded Ethan. Strangers dropped off cookies. Parents thanked him for protecting their children. Even the HOA board expressed regret for not noticing sooner. But Ethan didn't feel closure. He felt something worse. The absence of resistance. Cynthia hadn't fought, she hadn't threatened a lawsuit, denied the claims, or tried to drag others down with her. She had folded like someone who'd simply followed orders. Ethan went back into the server. Not the files he'd already shared, but the ones buried deeper. He'd mirrored the HOA's admin system weeks ago. Cynthia had labeled most of her documents neatly, but one folder caught his attention now. A plain name, resource, a 9, inside. Ethan found PDF contracts, invoices, and security law in Cynthia's name, but from a third-party company, Comstat Community Solutions. A subcontractor. They weren't hired to mow lawns or repaint mailboxes, they were hired for resident data aggregation and behavior monitoring. According to the digital invoice, and Cynthia's signature wasn't on the contract, Rachel Connors was the very board member who had rallied against Cynthia in the emergency meeting, the one who called for the vote, the one who had suddenly become the face of reform. Ethan's stomach turned. He dug deeper. Public filings, business records, payment trails. Rachel had been listed as a silent partner in Comstat. The devices planted across the neighborhood weren't Cynthia's idea. She was a pawn, a weapon, and when she became a liability, Rachel had thrown her under the bus to protect something much bigger. Profit.com Stat had been collecting behavioral data from Upton Ridge for over a year, using audio, movement patterns, and metadata to build resident psychological profiles sold to insurance firms, political research groups, and even real estate investors. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules, it was farming information, selling privacy disguised as policy. Ethan sat back, staring at the screen. He remembered the first fake violation. The first oddly specific email. The first strange car parked on the street at 2 a.m. They weren't accidents, they were tests. He knew what he had to do. The next day, Ethan compiled everything: connection to Comstat, the contract details, the server records. He contacted a trusted journalist from his cybersecurity days. Gave them access. Anonymous. At first, by the time the story hit the regional news circuit, the community was in chaos again, but this time for the right reasons. Rachel Connor resigned under pressure and vanished from public view. Comstat issued a bland statement, denying wrongdoing but halting all neighborhood data initiatives. Pending review. The state attorney general opened an inquiry into unlawful surveillance and data harvesting. But Ethan, he quietly declined the board's offer to take over. He didn't want power. He only wanted peace. Weeks later, he walked out onto his front lawn, coffee in hand, and waved at the mailman. For the first time in months, there were no eyes watching. No notes taped to the door, no drones in the sky. Just a soft breeze, a rustle of leaves, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing he'd protected more than just his home. He'd dismantled the hive, exposed the queen, and revealed the hand behind the curtain. Sometimes, the best defense isn't loud, it's quiet, patient, and always recording. Final call to action, impactful and reflective. This story might be over, but in neighborhoods like yours, someone like Cynthia or worse, always watching. If you believe in standing up against silent abuse of power, share this video. Let the watchers know someone's always watching back.